Hi there, my fellow YouTubians. I'm a week into my vacation. I've got another week and a half left to go. Today is Wednesday, and for my vlog today, I would like to talk to you about 5 underappreciated movies. I got a friend request here on from a fellow YouTubian, from CameronMcCasland, and I went through some of his old videos and saw one which he responded to someone else's video about the 5 movies that he felt were most underappreciated of the ones that he's seen. And I was actually planning on doing something like this for my vlog series, so why not do it today? 5 movies that I feel have not gotten the attention they deserved. First, Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. If you're a fan of the kinds of people on YouTube that do DVD updates and talk a lot about horror movies that they find, you've probably heard of this movie. It's a sort of a mock documentary, although not really. It's a straight horror movie, but it's comprised of a lot of raw footage that was taken by some of the characters who are graduate students, and they're making a documentary about an individual who is aspiring to be the next big notorious mass killer like Jason Voorhees or Mike Myers. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm watching this and going, what the heck kind of people are these? Why are they making a documentary about this guy who's planning on killing a whole bunch of teenagers at a party somewhere, you know? I mean, it's weird. It's just really weird. And then the story takes a number of twists. The decision that they made to show a lot of what happens through their raw footage is a good one. It really probably cut down on costs quite a bit. Very, very clever movie. When it was over, I just went, oh my goodness, that was so good. And then the credits started, and something's happening during the credits, and a song is playing that I really like. I'm like, no way, that's even better, I love it. So yeah, that's a really good one. In the 80s, I came across a movie called Switching Channels, which starred a number of people that I knew. Christopher Reeve, Burt Reynolds, and Kathleen Turner. Burt Reynolds is a guy who runs a cable news network, and Kathleen Turner is his star correspondent. And when she comes back from vacation with Christopher Reeve on her arm, saying that she's going to get married and move to New York and start her own daytime talk show, Burt Reynolds is like, well, I'm not going to have that. And he does everything that he can to thwart her plans to leave that day. It's a madcap comedy. It's very, very fast-paced. A lot of the dialogue is very fast-paced. Lots and lots and lots of fun. Really, I've enjoyed this movie for years, and I recommend it to anyone who likes that kind of film. Crashing is another very low-budget movie. It came out in late 2008. Campbell Scott is one of my favorite actors. He's the main character in this movie. He is a writer. He's written a novel and he's working on a second one, but when he gets locked out of his house by his wife and his bank account is frozen, he ends up living for a few days with a couple of college students who heard him speak at one of their classes. They're played by Lizzie Kaplan and Isabel Miko, and they're both so very beautiful and young, so he's obviously very tempted to get personal with them. What happens is he, in exchange for staying at their place for a few days, he offers to pay them in trade, to give them analysis and criticism on their writing. Which he does, and then there's a number of sequences which are really interesting because you don't know when they start whether or not it's something that's actually happening in the context of the story, or whether or not this is simply a dramatization of something that they're writing, because that happens quite frequently. The director is Gary Walkow, who has done a couple other films that I haven't seen. Beat, which has Kiefer Sutherland and Courtney Love in it, and Notes from Underground. These are movies that I haven't seen and hadn't really even heard of before now. This is the only movie of his that I've seen, but it's really, really good, and it's definitely the epitome of that kind of low-budget, shot on video in just a few days for a minimal amount of money kind of thing. It's an excellent film. I really like it a lot. Meet the Feebles is a movie that Peter Jackson made before he went on to do big things with Lord of the Rings, and this is one of his very, very best movies. If you're a fan of Peter Jackson, great. If not, you'll probably like this movie anyway because it's very different in tone from, you know, this big gargantuan stuff that he's been doing since then. It's a Muppet movie, but it's a very twisted Muppet movie. All the characters have adult problems like venereal disease and drug addiction and paternity suits. One of them is a compulsive overeater. The other one was cheating on his girlfriend with somebody else. And they're all these, you know, animal type characters. There's a rat, a walrus, a giant hippo, you know, a housefly, a rabbit, you know, they're all these Muppet characters, but they all have these incredibly twisted problems. It is so funny. It is one of the funniest things I've ever seen. I laughed harder than I've ever laughed during this movie just because it's so outrageous. And kudos to Peter Jackson for doing something like that. Finally, I would like to talk about another one movie that I feel is very underappreciated and not seen by very many people, of course, and that, of course, is Avatar. Just kidding, of course. No, actually what I mean to talk about is Titanic. No, of course, obviously not. A Midnight Clear is a drama that came out in the early 90s. It's directed by Keith Gordon, who is a former actor. He played the lead in the Stephen King movie Christine, but he's gone on to become a director. And this is, I'm not sure if it's adapted from a book or not. It could be. But what this is about a platoon of soldiers in World War II around Christmas time. They're setting up camp in Germany somewhere, or perhaps in France. I forget exactly. It's been a few years since I've seen it. The main characters, some of them are played by Peter Berg and Ethan Hawke and Gary Sinise. They're sort of a different type of unit because they've all been grouped together in one platoon because they have high IQs. So when they come across a squadron of Germans, they manage to broker a peaceable exchange. And when Christmas time comes, they're not fighting each other, they're exchanging gifts and food and wine and stuff like that, and they end up having a snowball fight at one point. Well, the Germans come to them with this little problem. They say, we don't believe in the Nazi cause, we don't believe what we're fighting in, but if we just sort of throw down our weapons and walk away, then we'll be punished for it and our families will be punished for it. So we have an idea, and that is that you Americans pretend to take us in a fake skirmish. We'll do a fake battle, which will just basically fire our guns in the air, and then we'll surrender to you, and you guys can take us prisoner, you know, and we'll surrender to you. Well, needless to say, things don't go quite according to plan. This is one of the best movies I've ever seen. It's a terrific movie, and it doesn't get nearly enough attention. It's fantastic, and I recommend it highly to anyone who's interested in that kind of film. Keith Gordon, of course. Now I'd like to take a second to talk about 1997. There are a whole bunch of movies that I was looking forward to that year. Titanic, of course, Contact, The Fifth Element, Face Off, Alien Resurrection. These are all movies I was really looking forward to, and a lot of them kind of disappointed me. The ones that didn't, however, were Crash by David Cronenberg, which is based on the novel by J.G. Ballard. It's a very twisted movie about people who get turned on by car accidents. Very weird. Jackie Brown by Quentin Tarantino, his third movie after Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, a terrific movie. Pam Grier, Robert Forster, Samuel Jackson, Robert De Niro, Bridget Fonda, terrific cast, one of his best movies. My number 3 favorite of that year was a documentary called Fast, Cheap, and Out of Control. It's directed by Errol Morris, who did Thin Blue Line and recently The Fog of War, which he won the Oscar for Best Director for Best Documentary. Sorry. It's about 4 different guys and what their job is like. One of them is a robot scientist. One of them is a specialist in mole rats. One of them is a topiary artist. He cuts bushes and trees in the shape of animals. And the last guy is an animal trainer. Very, very interesting movie. And it was shot actually by Robert Richardson, who also shot the Kill Bill movies for Tarantino and a lot of Oliver Stone's films in the 90s, like Natural Born Killers and JFK. So he brings that kind of multi-format aesthetic to the documentary, color, black and white, different formats like that. It's very, very interesting and really striking for a documentary. I like it a lot. My number 2 movie that year was a Spanish movie called Abre los Ojos, which is otherwise known as Open Your Eyes. And this was remade as a Tom Cruise movie, Vanilla Sky. But the original I like a lot more. It's directed by Alejandro Amenabar, who did The Others, the Nicole Kidman thriller, supernatural thriller of The Others. It's a terrific movie. I definitely recommend that over the remake. And my favorite movie of 1997 was Starship Troopers by Paul Verhoeven, who did RoboCop and Basic Instinct. This is a movie that's based on a novel by Robert Heinlein, a classic sci-fi novel about a fascist, militarized future version of our society that is fighting a war against alien insects. And what's great about this movie is that it has big action sequences and it's very exciting, but it's also a very, very twisted film because it's done in the form of a propaganda film. It's like if this society that it depicts actually existed, this movie would be their Top Gun. It would be their recruitment poster, their way of getting young people to sign up for the military. The heroes are real square-jawed, you know, and kind of bland. The women are all really beautiful, you know, and they're fighting. And there's all kinds of propaganda messages throughout the whole thing. Like they're part of the Nazis. It's like a futuristic Nazi regime, only we're supposed to be the heroes, and we're encroaching on the alien insects' territory, and they're fighting back against us. So in truth of the fact, the humans are actually the villains in the story, although it's not the tone is the opposite of that. It's very, very weird. And I can't believe that a studio actually gave Verhoeven $100 million to make this big, expensive movie, and they didn't look closely enough at the script to notice this. It's pretty great. It's really great stuff. So those are my favorite movies of '97, and I'll be back tomorrow, of course, with more stuff, including what I liked in '98. Thanks very much for watching. See you tomorrow.